And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth, where, guess what? There is some actually great news. And the news, as revealed on Politico and to some extent in a column in Wall Street Journal of all places by Gerald Seib, indicates that they may be getting close to an agreement on extending the debt ceiling and actually making real progress in bringing down the federal deficit, making more progress than anyone thought possible. There is all kinds of indication of new flexibility from President Obama, and that's got to be good news. I wanted to speak to somebody from the other side who may think that President Obama is showing too much flexibility. And I don't know, but we will find out with Congressman Jim McDermott. He is the congressman who represents the district in which I am sitting right now in downtown Seattle. He is a leader of the Progressive Caucus in the House of Representatives. He has served this country in the House of Representatives for more than 20 years now, Congressman. Is that right?
23.
23 years. Okay, that's a while. He is also a physician. He is a psychiatrist. He is a Navy veteran. And he graduate of Wheaton College, which always kind of surprises people out there, doesn't it?
I suppose it does.
Okay. Congressman McDermott, you were laughing. We were talking on the phone before. You seem to be not particularly encouraged about the status of these budget negotiations. Why not?
Well, Michael, one of the things that we're dealing with in Congress right now is a number of people who come to Congress with practically no experience of any depth in government whatsoever. And it's always, there's a process by which they have to go through learning the ideas they brought were good ideas and got them elected. But in fact, most of them have nothing to do or will not work or have been tried before and have failed. And so there's a process that we go through with members of Congress coming all full of piss and vinegar, and suddenly there they are. And I didn't know whether they would get the job done in time for us getting to the wall, as so to speak, in Wall Street. And I think that I was in the state legislature in 81, 82, when the state of Washington lost its bond rating. So I've been through this, and I watched the people struggle with it and watched the problems we had in digging out of it. And that was just the state of Washington. I mean, we went from a AAA bond down to single A, and, you know, we started paying 2 and 3% more every time we borrowed money. So I've been looking at this thing at the national level and figuring these people do not understand what they're talking about or what's going to happen if they default on their debts.
So you and I would probably agree. I mean, I've been saying on the air for a very long time, I do think it's tremendously important that there is some kind of agreement and that they extend the debt ceiling, that they raise the debt ceiling, because the consequences, while somewhat unpredictable, are very predictably bad. They're no good consequences.
No, there are no good consequences.
Okay, so we agree on that.
Yep, we do.
And I think that there seems to be strong agreement with Speaker Boehner and Leader Cantor, the majority leader in the House, and Senator McConnell, who met with the president yesterday, and with the President of the United States, and Senator Reid, and your leader in the House, Nancy Pelosi. So given that agreement, why should it be so impossible to, and one of the things people are also talking about is apparently the president and everybody else agrees that the target should be a reduction in the deficit of $4 trillion over the next 10 years. Do you think that's realistic?
It's probably realistic. I mean, we're talking targets here. We don't know what's going to happen in the next little while, but yes, that's a reasonable target.
Okay, good. So here we are, Jim McDermott, one of the most proudly and unapologetically progressive leaders in the House of Representatives, and you're proud of that title, aren't you?
Sure, of course.
Okay, I know you are. And so here we are, we're agreeing very broadly, and I'll tell you what is news today is that Jay Carney in the White House was focusing, apparently the White House has now dropped the previous insistence of a general raise in tax rates. They're now talking about eliminating some deductions that favor wealthy people, that favor some businesses over other businesses. They're talking about simplifying and clearing up some of the forest of special deals in the tax code, which a lot of us on the conservative side have wanted to do for a long time. What's wrong with that?
Michael, it is never, when you're having this kind of discussion, everything has to be on the table, and if you put one thing on the table and say, well, what about this? Well, yes, but let me see what else you're connecting it to, and then you put another one and you say, yes, and yes. You could lead me down the road to exactly your conclusion, but in fact, I think that there really has to be a broad discussion, and one of the problems with negotiating this kind of thing in the press or in press releases and all that kind of stuff,
or radio shows,
is that all the complexities are not on the table in people's minds as they listen to us. So I think that some of the things you're suggesting make good sense. I don't have any problem with them.
And by the way,
as a part of a whole deal.
Correct, and it needs to be part of a whole deal. Will you agree with me, and I think with the overwhelming majority of Americans, that part of the problem with the government's situation right now is that government right now is spending too much?
Yes, I would agree to that. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Can I mention a scam that I just learned about that has actually been supported by one of your Republican colleagues? It just seems to be it's a train to nowhere deal for John Micah down in Florida. You're laughing.
I thought we didn't have earmarks.
Right. Yeah. No. This is pathetic. It's $1.2 billion to build a train where they're predicting, the most optimistic prediction is they'll have 2,150 riders a day. So basically, if to pay this thing off over 10 years, the government is going to have to subsidize each one of these train trips for over 10 years for about $165 per passenger. So, I mean, can that kind of thing? I mean, again, as a progressive, right? I mean, that kind of earmark for a very little used train system under the best of circumstances. By the way, and part of the money, federal money, is going to benefit CSX Railroad, which is going to be co-using the tracks. Fancy that. Corporate welfare.
You're finding things that don't particularly surprise me, but this is why so much of this discussion is sort of people yelling over the fence at each other, when in fact, if we could sit down and people were serious and meant it. But one of the real problems, the biggest problem I have, is how much of what's going on is simply about when the next election is and who's going to win and who's going to have the leverage in that election. It's not about the problems that face America or all Americans. And I think that everything I tell people in my speeches, that if you want to understand what's going on from now on for the next 18 months, always say to yourself, how does this affect the election? Because everything is tied to the 2012 election. And unfortunately, that makes good policy making very difficult to do. And I I hope that we can get the job done here without doing too much damage to the American people.
Let me read you something from Politico, just posted a couple of hours ago, Congressman McDermott. And it says, President Obama's hope is that Speaker John Boehner, with whom he met privately last week, will be intrigued by a bolder package that might also help neutralize the Medicare issue now hurting the GOP among elderly voters. This seems like there is some willingness, maybe, just maybe, to look beyond the election to try to get a meaningful deal to get a handle of this budgetary crisis. Do you expect that when they come up with a deal that you and other progressives in the Democratic caucus in the House will be able to support it?
Well, Michael, I already voted for the clean increase in the debt limit. I'm willing. I am committed. I know that this is going to happen. I know that it's going to be ugly, but I don't want to be on the side of hanging the American people out to dry for political purposes.
All right, we'll come right back with callers for Congressman Jim McDermott, a veteran liberal progressive in the House of Representatives, on the budget crisis. 21 minutes after the hour on the Michael Medved Show, your daily dose of debate. And there's plenty of debate in Capitol Hill and around the country about the looming budgetary crisis. If there's not some kind of a deal by August 2nd regarding lifting the debt ceiling by the Congress of the United States, there could be very, very unpleasant financial consequences worldwide, and certainly for the United States of America. That's one of the reasons I'm speaking to Congressman Jim McDermott. He and I disagree on probably 90% of the major issues, but I wanted to have him on because I assumed, because I know that Congressman McDermott is a public-spirited, someone who loves his country, has served his country in the past, and wants, just like all the conservatives up there, to get this thing fixed. No, I'm not wrong about that, am I, Congressman?
No. I think that the assumption one should always make is that everybody in Congress cares about what's happening and wishes that they could make things better for the people. I mean, that's why you go into it. You don't go into it just because you didn't have anything else to do on a Wednesday evening.
Hey, you had a pretty interesting job before.
I did. I actually, when I came back from Africa, I had a long conversation with my brother about why the hell am I doing this? I got a great job. I'm doing an interesting thing. It's an important thing to be doing for the country. And
tell people what you were doing.
Well, I was working for the State Department as a regional medical officer, taking care of our employees overseas. I had the 26 embassies south of the equator, everything from Gabon to Somalia. So I traveled all through 26 embassies and saw what was going on, and it was a very, very interesting job. And so, I was pleased with what I was doing. I love practicing medicine. It was not, politics for me is not something that I do because I don't have anything else to do or kind of as a hobby. I do it because I think there's important things to do in it, just as I think that about medicine.
Let's go to Mark in Detroit, Michigan. You're on the Michael Medved Show with Congressman Jim McDermott.
Good afternoon, rather. My question is for Congressman McDermott. Why is it that we automatically think that if we don't raise the debt ceiling, we have to default on our government obligations? Why can't we pay those first and make the cuts elsewhere? And why can't we have politicians with courage in Washington, D.C. that can make those cuts?
Well, there is certainly some. I understand some of what you're saying, and let me explain. Maybe I can use an analogy you might understand. I used to sail on the ore boats on the Great Lakes. You couldn't turn those things on a dime. It takes a long way to turn them. And we spent 8 years digging ourselves into the mess we're in. Let's not bother blaming anybody. Let's just say it happened. And we are not going to fix it instantly. And I think that I'm as concerned as anybody is about our debt problem in the world. I think that it's something we all Americans have got to sit down and be serious and honest about. But I don't think it's going to happen instantly. And that means we can have a plan and lay out a plan, a 4-year or 5-year plan or whatever. The president laid out a 10-year plan. Paul Ryan laid out a 10-year plan. Okay, let's discuss the plan. But there is something we have to do today, and that is raise the debt limit. That's not going to be. That's not the cure-all. If we
don't do that, and basically Moody's has said this. Even if we pay off our creditors, if they don't raise the debt limit, they will probably downgrade the credit status of the United States of America, which means you have to pay more in interest, right?
Yep, and that's why I have said I'm not sure that everybody who is, jumping up and down about this business has really thought through what the impact of a single digit, if they drop us 1 point, if they take us from AAA rated bonds down to double, that increases the debt instantly by $1 trillion. That's what the amount of money it would cost us if we did not pay our loans beginning whenever it is in August or whatever day it is. And the fact is that we are saddling our children with, and I don't want to do that. So I'd rather borrow a little bit more money now, but we've got to make some serious changes in taxes and military and expenditures
and entitlement programs.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, good.
I think I'm one of those people who wants Social Security to succeed.
And Medicare, which is the
Yes,
big one. Let's go to Dave in Chicago. You're on the Michael Medved Show with Congressman Jim McDermott.
Hey, my question for the congressman, you opened this conversation talking about some of the newer members of Congress and their inexperience, and my question is, does that mean that you did not support Obama in the election, considering he got into Congress in 2006 and basically started running for president in 2007 after voting present? And do you see the inexperience in his leadership in the last 2.5 years?
He actually came to the Senate in 2005, but that's okay. Go ahead, Congressman.
What do you want me to be consistent?
You would quote Emerson on this: "Consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds."
Indeed. I think that we have every president goes through a learning curve. I don't care what you did before. You don't know what being president is really going to be like until you're there. And I think the president didn't know that the roof was falling in on him. Even as he was being elected in 2008, the Lehman Brothers was going down the drain and all the rest of this. So whatever he thought he knew, he had to go through a whole crash course in how you deal with a catastrophe.
I think crash is the operative word. Let's go to Tim in Seattle. You're on the Michael Medved Show with your Congressman, Jim McDermott.
Hi. Well, speaking back onto the whole thing about inexperience and in 20 years of you serving us here in the Washington State, shouldn't there be term limits on you? I mean, really, the president only gets 8 years. Why do you? There should be no reason you should get that. I think you're 18 years.
No, it's 23. But go ahead, Congressman.
No, he's talking about the state legislature too. Well, let me put it another way. Just to think about that for a second. Do you think there should be a term limit on how long a man can do surgery or how long a woman can do surgery in the hospital?
Well, again, you would say that with someone doing surgery, there's no reason to believe that you get worse at it or more set in your ways. People don't call for constantly new ideas in doing good surgery, do they? But they do for government.
You're looking for experience when you go to the hospital, when you go to the doctor. You want to know that somebody has been there more than 1 week, right? If you can. I mean, if you're desperate, you'll take whatever you get, buddy. Ordinarily, we value experience, except in politics. In politics, we act as though experience is a bad thing, and I frankly disagree with that. I think I've learned. I'm smarter, way smarter than I was when I started 40 years ago in this business.
Congressman Jim McDermott, Dr. Jim McDermott, appreciate your time. I know you have to run. When we come back, a presidential candidate, Republican, calls for working across the aisle. We'll get to that.
The Michael Medved Show.